Locked On Podcast Network presents Locked On Sports Today.
The Miami Heat upset the Bucks and the Celtics last year after a lackluster regular season, but should anyone in the East be afraid of them this year? Also, we give you the best bets for the tournament, and should Ime Udoka be the NBA Coach of the Year? Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. I'm Peter Bukowski, starting your day with the can't-miss stories and biggest debates in sports. You're Locked On Sports Today.
Searching all major sports. Found.
Let's start with the biggest story.
Despite being in the play-in conversation, there might not be a team, the top seeds in the Eastern Conference, want to see less than the Miami Heat. A 91-98 loss to the 76ers last night. No Joel Embiid, no Jimmy Butler, has the Heat in the 8th spot in the Eastern Conference. Wes Goldberg from Locked On Heat joins me now. And Wes, we have talked about the vicissitudes of this season with the Heat, and there are a lot of similarities to what we saw last year with injuries keeping this team from getting to where they want to go. As we stand here, though, in mid to late March, how scared of the Heat should those top teams in the East be right now?
Honestly, I don't know how scared they should be based on what we've seen this season. The Heat are 3-18 against teams with a top 10 point differential. They have had a hard time beating good teams. Now, in terms of teams with a top 10 point differential, that does not include the Philadelphia 76ers, but going into today, they had the 11th best point differential. So almost. And look, this was a team that the Heat had beaten twice this year already. They are now 2-1 against the Sixers. Like you mentioned already, no Jimmy Butler, no Tyler Hero, no Kevin Love. They lost Duncan Robinson after 3 quarters of this game, and they're playing on the second night of a back-to-back. So I don't know how much to take away from this loss in particular that we just saw. But in terms of the greater body of work for Miami, I don't know that they've really proven anything this year that makes you believe that they are one of the top teams in the East or a real threat. Now, did they prove anything last year? Did they prove something
right,
being the 8th seed in the postseason last year? Perhaps, I guess. And if we want to say you can't count the Heat out, that's fine, I guess. But that's one argument. The argument that I'm struggling to make is why should we count the Heat in? You know, that the basketball argument part of it is getting tougher and tougher to make with 14 games to go.
Yeah, and last year you could say some similar things, to be sure, but then they went out and did it in the playoffs. And I think a lot of people, myself included, felt like, okay, well, this is going to click into place now. Jaime Jaquez is been a revelation for this team, and I understand the injuries. Why do you think we're still sitting here in, as I said, mid to late March going, this team feels almost exactly like it did this time last year?
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? I mean, you mentioned the injuries. The Heat have used 32 different starting lineups this season.
That seems like a lot.
It seems like a lot. And Jimmy Butler has missed a lot of games. He's not even eligible for end of season awards. Ditto for Tyler Hero. Like, these are 2 starters. I don't even really know what Miami's preferred starting lineup is if they're healthy. Like, we just don't know because we haven't really gotten a chance to see anything even close to that. This season never really felt like it got going. Because it's just like they started with injuries with Haywood Highsmith and Caleb Martin, and then there was just like a different injury every other week. And where it felt like something should coalesce at some point, it just feels like we never really got that opportunity. Miami just had their first lineup a week ago crack 100 minutes together. For reference, the Denver Nuggets most used lineup is at like 900 minutes. There are several lineups that have played 100 minutes together since the All-Star break, which was only a few weeks ago. Miami just had their first lineup do that, and that lineup is actually a minus in net rating. So it's just sort of the lineup that they've been able to use because it's been the healthiest one. It's not necessarily their best lineup. So it's just a weird year for the Heat. With that in mind, what if they all did get healthy at the right time?
Yeah.
Maybe that's something that could spark a run in the playoffs. I think last year you saw sort of their reversion to the mean from a 3-point shooting percentage perspective. That's not really an issue for Miami. They're a fine 3-point shooting team this regular season. I don't know if we can expect some sort of lightning in a bottle reversion to the mean all at the right time, but maybe they can catch lightning in the bottle in terms of just overall health, and then we can actually see what this team really is, because it feels like we haven't really seen this team at full strength all year.
Yeah, and we did see a stretch of them just about a month ago where they beat the heck out of the Magic. They beat the heck out of the Bucks, who had Giannis in that game. They beat the Sixers, the Pelicans, the Kings all in a row. And you're thinking, okay, here come the Heat. And then all of that goodwill undone with some bad losses. I mean, they lost to the Wizards, which is like unforgivable this season. They barely beat the Pistons just the other game. And so to your point, it just feels like they never really found any kind of rhythm, whether that's injuries, whether that's roster construction. Like it seems like we just don't know anything about this team right now.
I don't know if they're good. I don't. I have no idea if this team is good. I don't know if they're bad. I don't know if they're mediocre. I flatly do not know. I think they're better, weirdly, than they were last year. I think they're deeper. I think Bam is better. I think guys like Caleb Martin are more proven. I think there are elements of this team that are better, but it's just been so hard for them to put it all together and figure it all out. But if anybody's going to do it, it's this Miami Heat team, it's Eric Spoelstra, and it's Jimmy Butler, who hasn't been playing great lately, but keeps telling everybody within shouting distance that he could turn it on whenever he wants. And it feels like he needs to get on the court, number one, get back from this foot injury. And when he does, he's probably going to have to turn it on before the playoffs even begin so that the Heat can climb out of this play-in tournament and position themselves for a real run here.
Stay up to date all year on the Miami Heat by subscribing to Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Heat on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. Thanks for making Locked On Sports Today your first listen. Coming up, we look at the overrated, the sleepers, and the 12-5 upsets you need to pay attention to. Before we get to that, the Saints are adding to their pass rush. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, and their best price guarantee, Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. Gametime has plenty of last-minute tickets to your favorite team. They also make it easy to get in the gate with flash deals and zone deals. Gametime makes it easy to find and buy tickets for every kind of event in your area. They've got views from all the seats in the venue. Gametime has the lowest price guarantee. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Right now, new Gametime users get $20 off your first purchase with code LOCKEDON. Terms apply. Just download the Gametime app and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, the lowest price guaranteed. As you know, Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel, Locked On Sports Today. Baseball fans, mark your calendars for March 20th at 7 p.m. Eastern for the best Major League Baseball season preview coming exclusively to Locked On Sports Today. On March 20th at 7 p.m. Eastern time, be the first to get local insight from the MLB local experts of the Locked On Podcast Network. Find it on March 20th at 7 p.m. Eastern on the Locked On Sports Today 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. The New Orleans Saints are hoping to be the latest team to take on the Chase Young reclamation project.
So here's the big thing that I think Chase Young has the most immediate impact on, and it's getting after the quarterback with speed, getting after the quarterback quickly as a constant part of your defense. The Saints have characteristically and typically been a defense whose pass rushers get there because the coverage held up and the quarterback holds on to the football. It's a second, third effort, 4 or 5 seconds into the snap, or rather, into the play after the snap. Chase Young is a speed guy that can get around the end. He's got a little bit of power, but mostly a speed guy who can get around the edge and get after your quarterback like that. And that's an element that we haven't seen for the New Orleans Saints since, Alex Okafor was maybe the closest?
The 49ers fudged the numbers, and now they have to pay. They have forfeited a 2025 draft choice and were penalized 4 spots for a selection in this year's draft as a result of administrative payroll accounting errors, the NFL announced Monday. The Niners will give up their original 5th-round choice in the 2025 draft and have their 2024 4th-round selection move from 131 to 135. According to a statement from the NFL, a league review discovered the payroll accounting errors at the end of the 2022 league year that resulted in a misreporting of the team's cumulative player compensation. In other words, they got their salary cap wrong. In the association, the New York Knicks got some bad news on a key player. Forward OG Anunoby has had a post-surgical flare-up in his right elbow and is expected to miss an undisclosed amount of time. Never a good sign when you get undisclosed amount of time. Anunoby, who returned for 3 games following a February 8th procedure to remove a loose particle from his shooting elbow, will need for the elbow to calm down before he can return to the lineup. The Knicks are 15-2 with him since January 1st and 8-10 with him on the sideline. The T-Wolves were in Salt Lake City to face the Jazz.
Wolves going for the 4-game season sweep over the Utah Jazz for the first time in franchise history, actually, tonight. All while, by the way, not having played a home game in 14 days. So tonight was their 6th and final road game here on this long gauntlet of a stretch before they do head back home tomorrow and square off against the reigning champs. More on that later. Tonight, though, the topic: Wolves just finding a way to get it done without the unicorns, right? No Cat, no Rudy Gobert, no Naz Reid. He left the game at halftime, but Anthony Edwards puts the team on his back, 32 points, and the dunk that rocked the entire state of Utah, man. Wolves' depth also showed up huge. 10 different players tonight scoring points. The Wolves win it 114-104 and do sweep the Utah Jazz series 4-0. This turned out to be an absolute, I thought it was a really fun, entertaining game.
And in baseball news, the reigning NL Cy Young winner finally has a new home as Blake Snell is headed to the Giants.
You're bringing in a guy who won the Cy Young Award last year, and Logan Webb finished second, and he had a 2.25 ERA. The peripherals were not as good. It's not like he completely, quote unquote, deserved necessarily a 2.25 ERA, but nonetheless, the peripherals were still really, really good. He has flaws. He walks a lot of hitters. He doesn't pitch deep into games, but what I love is that he's a strikeout king. I think my first bullet point on YouTube is K King. I mean, strikeout king. I don't know if he actually led the league in strikeouts or not, but the last 2 seasons in San Diego, by the way, familiar with Bob Melvin. And so when they were looking for a new manager and they said they wanted someone who was going to be effective at recruiting, I think it's safe to say that Bob Melvin probably had an influence on the signing of Matt Chapman and Blake Snell, both of whom played for Bob Melvin.
Who should you pick in your bracket pool? Well, we know who you shouldn't pick.
This is Lee Sterling with Paramount Sports, your Locked On Bets insider. And these are the 3 most overrated teams for March Madness. Number 1 seed, Purdue. They try to feed the ball way too much to Zach Edey, and they miss a lot of key free throws late in games. Number 2 seed, Tennessee. They have arguably the best player in the country in Dalton Knecht, but their second best 3-point shooter hits only 38%, but only on about 30 regular season attempts. Number 2 seed, Arizona. This Pac-12 team was playing poor opponents all season long. When they played decent rosters like FAU and Washington State, they had trouble. They have played very few quad 1 opponents.
And everyone knows, you pick at least 12 seeds to upset the 5 seed. But which ones should you choose?
Everyone loves to watch and bet the number 5 and 12 seed games. Why? The number 12 seeds have gone 53-99, almost 35% since the field was expanded to 64 teams in 1985. My top 2 number 12 seeds to win straight up this year: James Madison, money line, plus 175 versus Wisconsin. I think Wisconsin's energy is going to be sapped up after playing Purdue and also Illinois in the last 2 games, 4 games straight here. The Duke's 31-3. They average almost 85 points per game. And Grand Canyon, money line, also plus 175. Bryce Drew's team, 3rd appearance here in 21 and 23. I expect them to perform better and get at least to the 2nd or 3rd round. They're a top 50 scoring defense and offense here. Take a money line.
And everyone loves a sleeper this time of year. Who are the sleepers you should pay attention to this time around?
And these are my 3 sleeper teams for March Madness. Number 5, Gonzaga. Number 1 and number 2, Purdue and Tennessee, are consistent choke artists in this region here. And number 4, Kansas, is banged up. This team beat Kentucky and St. Mary's on the road. Number 10, Drake. Top scorer Tucker DeVries, number 6 scoring in college basketball with over 21 points per game, had 13 games of 25 points or more, and the team shot over 43% from three-point range in conference tournament. And number 11, Duquesne. The Dukes have won 8 straight, and they rank number 34 in adjusted defense, the best among mid-major busters here. For more insight and game selections, make sure to follow me on social media at Paramount Sports and check out ParamountSports.com.
Get all the information you need to win your bracket pool by checking out our NCAA tournament preview, by subscribing to Locked On Sports Today and Locked On College Basketball on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. Coming up, why Ime Udoka deserves NBA Coach of the Year consideration. Say goodbye to busted brackets because FanDuel lets you bet on every game of the tournament. Whether you're betting on a big upset or a 1 seed, it's time to go dancing on America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 to use on point spreads, money lines. You can even pick who's going to win it all in the futures bet. Colorado State and Virginia get together tonight for a first 4 matchup for the 10 seed. FanDuel likes the Rams over the Cavaliers by 2.5 in this one. The other first 4 matchup is Wagner and Howard. FanDuel gives Howard a 3.5 point advantage. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and bet on college hoops until they cut down the nets. The Rockets have been quite the surprise. They're creeping up on a potential play-in spot in the West. That's why Locked On NBA host Jackson Gatlin says Ime Udoka deserves a look at Coach of the Year.
Vegas over-under win total coming into the season was 31.5 games, and they've already crushed that, hitting 32. And they very realistically have a path forward to hit 40, despite they just lost their best player in Alperen Sengun. They currently also have lost Cam Whitmore, who's been sensational as a rookie and somebody that Ime Udoka has leaned on quite a bit. And earlier this season, they lost Tari Eason, who's an absolute difference maker, especially on the defensive end of the floor. So when you look at the adversity that this group has faced, an incredibly young group, a group that did a lot of losing for the past few years, being completely honest, for Ime Udoka to step in as a year 1 head coach and make them a top 10 defense and giving them a shot here, in the final 15 games or so to push for a Western Conference play-in spot after being a top 4 lottery team the past 3 years running. That is a complete and insane turnaround for an organization to make in just 1 season. And I think it absolutely warrants a discussion for Ime Udoka to be at least in consideration for the NBA's Coach of the Year award. I'm not saying he should win it. I think that honor largely will fall to either Chris Finch with the Minnesota Timberwolves or Mark Daignault with the OKC Thunder, 2 coaches who have done an incredible job with their respective organizations. But when you look at where the Rockets were and where they are right now and where they have the chance to finish this year, I think he absolutely has to at least be in the discussion for Coach of the Year.
Saying someone should be in the conversation for an award is just another way of usually saying they're not going to win. And this is exactly one of those cases. We could recognize that Ime Udoka is doing a fabulous job resetting the culture in Houston, but they also brought in some legitimate NBA players. It helps when you have a real point guard in Fred VanVleet. It's just a settling force. And we knew Ime Udoka was going to get them to play defense, but he's not necessarily the reason that Alperen Sengun is an all-star caliber player this year. Now, you can quibble over the size and function of his role and all of those things. And that's reasonable. He's done a good job. But there's a reason that you don't see Ime Udoka in the top 5 or 6 on the FanDuel odds to win Coach of the Year. It's because someone like Mark Daignault in Oklahoma City is just doing a better job. He is a more deserving candidate, taking this young Oklahoma City Thunder team, getting them to coalesce, find their roles. They're a historic team in terms of their shooting. Chris Finch has turned a team that no one thought could be a 1 seed in the West. Gotten this defense to work. Gotten the pieces that a lot of us didn't think fit together to fit together. They're the reason that those 2 guys are at the top and no one else is even close. Ime Udoka 75-1 to win Coach of the Year. That's another way of saying, yeah, he's in the conversation. He's a really good coach. We knew that. but he doesn't deserve to win Coach of the Year. That's not slander. That's not shade. He's a really good coach. He's not the Coach of the Year. And finally, Kenny Pickett will not have you or anyone else say he handled his divorce with the Steelers poorly. Pickett said at his Eagles introductory press conference, "I handled it the way I should have handled it." A report from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette said Pickett did not deal well with the acquisition of Wilson. Pickett went on to say, "Everything happens for a reason, and I'm right where I'm supposed to be." Where that will be is on the bench behind Jalen Hurts. Just so that's clear. As you know, Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel, Locked On Sports Today. Baseball fans, mark your calendar for March 20th at 7 p.m. Eastern for the best Major League Baseball season preview coming exclusively to Locked On Sports Today. On March 20th at 7 p.m. Eastern, be the first to get local insight from the MLB local experts of the Locked On Podcast Network. Find it on March 20th at 7 p.m. Eastern on the Locked On Sports Today 24/7 streaming channel, on YouTube, or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. Coming up on the next Locked On Sports Today, which 4 teams should you pick to be the last 4 standing in your bracket? So at least until tomorrow, stay locked on sports today.
Locked On Podcast Network presents Locked On Sports Today.
For more episodes of Locked On Sports Today, go to our video on demand. Click on sports at the top of your screen. There, you'll find past episodes of Locked On Sports Today, plus other Locked On shows on demand.